welcome to another chapter of reading. We are in for a long, emotional one, so be warned. Chapter 33, The Prince's Tale. Harry remained kneeling at Snape's side, simply staring down at him, until suddenly a high, cold voice spoke so close to them that Harry jumped to his feet, the flask gripped tightly in his hands, thinking that Voldemort had re-entered the room. Voldemort's voice reverberated from the walls and floor, and Harry realized that he was talking to Hogwarts and to all the surrounding area, that the residents of Hogsmeade and all those still fighting at the castle would hear him as clearly as if he stood beside them, his breath on the back of their necks, a death blow away. "You have fought," said the high, cold voice, "valiantly. Lord Voldemort knows how to value bravery. Yet you have sustained heavy losses. If you continue to resist me, you will all die, one by one. I do not wish this to happen. Every drop of magical blood spilled is a loss and a waste. Lord Voldemort is merciful." Yeah, right. "I command my forces to retreat immediately." "You have 1 hour. Dispose of your dead with dignity. Treat your injured. I speak now, Harry Potter, directly to you. You have permitted your friends to die for you, rather than face me yourself. I shall wait for 1 hour in the Forbidden Forest. If at the end of that hour you have not come to me, have not given yourself up, then battle recommences. This time I shall enter the fray myself, Harry Potter, and I shall find you. I shall punish every last man, woman, and child who has tried to conceal you from me. 1 hour. Both Ron and Hermione shook their heads frantically, looking at Harry. "Don't listen to him," said Ron. "It'll be all right," said Hermione wildly. Let's get back to the castle. If he's gone to the forest, we'll need to think of a new plan." She glanced at Snape's body, then hurried back to the tunnel entrance. Ron followed her. Harry gathered up the invisibility cloak, then looked down at Snape. He didn't know what to feel, except shock at the way Snape had been killed, and the reason for which it had been done. They crawled back through the tunnel, none of them talking, and Harry wondered whether Ron and Hermione could still hear Voldemort ringing in their heads as he could. "You have permitted your friends to die for you, rather than face me yourself. I shall wait for 1 hour in the Forbidden Forest. 1 hour." Small bundles seemed to litter the lawn at the front of the castle. It could only be an hour or so from dawn, yet it was pitch black. The three of them hurried toward the stone steps. A lone clog the size of a small boat lay abandoned in front of them. There was no other sign of crop or his attacker. The castle was unnaturally silent. There were no flashes of light now, no bangs, screams, or shouts. The flagstones of the deserted entrance hall were stained with blood. Emeralds were still scattered all over the floor, along with pieces of marble and splintered wood. Part of the banisters had been blown away. "Where is everyone?" whispered Hermione. Ron led the way to the great hall. Harry stopped in the doorway. The house tables were gone and the room was crowded. The survivors stood in groups, their arms around each other's necks. The injured were being treated upon the raised platform by Madame Pomfrey and a group of helpers. Lorenz was among the injured. His flanks poured blood and he stood where he lay, unable to stand. Hugs for Lorenz. The dead lay in a row in the middle of the hall. Harry couldn't see Fred's body because his family surrounded him. George was kneeling at his head. Mrs. Weasley was lying across Fred's chest, her body shaking. Mr. Weasley stroking her hair while tears cascaded down his cheeks. Oh. Hugs for the Weasleys. Hugs for the Weasleys. Without a word to Harry, Ron and Hermione walked away. Harry saw Hermione approach Ginny, whose face was swollen and blotchy, then hug her. Ron joined Bill, Fleur, and Percy, who flung an arm around Ron's shoulders. As Ginny and Hermione moved closer to the rest of the family, Harry had a clear view of the bodies lying next to Fred. Remus and Tonks, pale, still, and peaceful looking, apparently asleep beneath the dark enchanted ceiling. I feel so bad for Andromeda. Hugs for her. The great hall seemed to fly away, become smaller, shrink, as Harry reeled backward from the doorway. He couldn't draw breath. He couldn't bear to look at any of the other bodies, to see who else had died for him. He couldn't bear to join the Weasleys. Couldn't look into their eyes. When, if he had given himself up in the first place, Fred might have never died. Oh. Survival's guilt, Harry. You are going through this. And you deserve all these hugs, too. He turned away and ran up the marble staircase. Lupin, Tonks, he yearned not to feel. He wished he could rip out his heart, his innards, everything that was screaming inside him. Oh, Harry, I remember, I have times where I go through that too, but because the sorrow, the loss, and the grief are just so heavy, and it can really weigh you down. But you must remember that you do have friends and family that love you, Harry, just as I have friends and family who love me. Here's more hugs for you. The castle was completely empty.
Even the ghosts seemed to have joined the mass mourning in the great hall. Harry ran without stopping, clutching the silver flask of Snape's last thoughts, and he didn't slow down until he reached the stone gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office. "Password? Dumbledore," said Harry without thinking, because it was he whom he yearned to see, and to his surprise the gargoyle slid aside, leaving the spiral staircase, revealing the spiral staircase behind. But when Harry burst into the circular office, he found a change. The portraits that hung all around the walls were empty. Not a single headmaster or headmistress remained to see him. It seemed all had fluttered away, charging through the paintings that lined the castle, so that they could have a clear view of what was going on. Harry glanced hopelessly at Dumbledore's deserted frame, which hung directly behind the headmaster's chair, then turned his back on it. The stone pensive lay in the cabinet where it had always been. Harry heaved it onto the desk and poured Snape's memories into the wide basin with a tuning marking along the edge. To escape into someone else's head would be a blessed relief. Nothing that even Snape had left him could be worse than his own thoughts. Then the memory swirled, silver, white, and strange. Then, without hesitating, with a feeling of reckless abandonment, as though this would assuage his torturing grief, Harry dived. He fell headlong into sunlight, and his feet found warm ground. When he straightened up, he saw that he was in a nearly deserted playground. A single huge chimney dominated the distant skyline. Two girls were swinging backward and forward, kind of like how I am now, and a skinny boy was watching them from behind a clump of bushes. His black hair was overwhelming, and his clothes were so mixed matched that it looked too deliberate. Two short jeans, a shabby overlarge coat that might have belonged to a grown man, and odd smock-like shorts. Harry moved closer to the boy. Snape looked no more than 9 or 10 years old. Sallow, small, and stringy. There was undisguised greed in his thin face as he watched the younger of the two girls swinging higher and higher than her sister. "Lily, don't do it!" shrieked the elder of the two. But the girl had let go of the swing at the very height of its arc and flown into the air, quite literally flown, launched herself skyward with a great shout of laughter, and instead of crumpling on ground asphalt, she soared like a trapeze artist through the air, staying up far too long, landing far too lightly. "I told you not to!" Petunia stopped her swing by dragging the heels of her sandals on the ground, making a crunching, grinding sound. Then leapt up, hands on hips. "Mommy said you weren't allowed, Lily!" "But I'm fine," said Lily, still giggling. "Toonie, look at this! Watch what I can do!" Petunia glanced around. The playground was deserted, apart from themselves, and though the girls didn't know it, Snape. Lily had picked up a fallen flower from the bush behind where Snape worked. Petunia advanced, evidently torn between curiosity and disapproval. Lily waited until Petunia was near enough to have a clear view, then held out her palm. The flower sat there, opening and closing its petals like some bizarre many-lipped oyster. "Stop it!" shrieked Petunia. "It's not hurting you," said Lily, but she closed her hand on the blossom and threw it back to the ground. "It's not right," said Petunia, but her eyes had followed the flower's flight to the ground and lingered upon it. "How do you do it?" she added, and there was definite longing in her voice. "It's all this." Snape could no longer contain himself, but had jumped out from behind The bushes. Petunia nearly shrieked and ran backward toward the swings. But Lily, though clearly startled, remained where she was. Snape seemed to regret his appearance. A dull flush of color mounted the sallow cheeks as he looked at Lily. "What's obvious?" asked Lily. Snape had an air of nervous excitement. With a glance at the distant Petunia, now hovering beside the swings, he lowered his voice and said, "I know what you are." "What do you mean?" "You're a witch," whispered Snape. She looked affronted. "That's not a very nice thing to say to somebody." She turned, nose in the air, and marched off toward her sister. "No," said Snape. He was highly covered now, and Harry wondered why he didn't take off the ridiculously large coat, unless it was because he didn't want to reveal the smoke beneath it. He flapped after the girls, looking ludicrously bat-like, like his older self. The sisters considered him, united in disapproval, both holding on to one of the swing poles as though it was the safe place in tag. "Oh," said Snape to Lily. "Oh, what?" "I've been watching you for a while, but there's nothing wrong with that. My mum's one, and I'm a wizard." Petunia's laugh was like cold water. "Wizard!" she shrieked, her courage returned now that she had recovered from the shock of his unexpected appearance. "I know who you are. You're that Snape boy. They live down Spinner's End by the river," she told Lily, and it was evident from her tone that she considered the address a poor recommendation. "Why have you been spying on us?" "I've been spying," said Snape, hot, uncomfortable, and dirty-haired in the bright sunlight. "Been spying you anyway," he added spitefully. "You're a muggle." Though Petunia evidently didn't understand the word, she could hardly mistake the tone. "Lily, come on, we're leaving," she said shrilly. Lily obeyed her sister at once, glaring at Snape as she left. He stood watching them as they marched through the playground gate, and Harry, the only one left to observe him, recognized Snape's bitter disappointment, and understood that Snape had been planning this moment for a while, and that it had gone all wrong. The scene dissolved, and before Harry knew it, reformed around him. He was now in a smaller thicket of trees. He could see a sunlit river glittering through their trunks. The shadows cast by the trees made a basin of cool green shade. Two children sat facing each other, cross-legged on the ground. Snape had removed his coat now. His old smile looked less peculiar in the half-light. "And the ministry can punish you if you do magic at that school. You get That's it. But I have done magic outside school. Well, right. We haven't got warm yet. No, that's it. Oh, when you're a kid and you can't help it. Well, once you're 11, he nodded importantly, and they start training you. Then you've got to be careful. There was a little silence. Lily had picked up a fallen twig and twirled it in the air, and Harry knew that she was imagining sparks trailing from it. Then she dropped the twig, leaned in toward the boy, and said, "It is real, isn't it? It's not a joke. Petunia says you're lying to me. Petunia says there isn't a Hogwarts. It is real, isn't it?" "It's real for us," said Snape. "Not for her. But we'll get better. You and I." "Really?" whispered Lily. "Definitely," said Snape, and even with his poorly cut hair and his odd clothes, he struck an oddly impressive figure sprawled in front of her, brimful of confidence in his destiny. "And it really come by how?" Lily whispered. "Normally," said Snape, "but you're Muggle born, so someone from the school will have to come and explain to your parents." "Does it make a difference being Muggle born?" Snape hesitated. His black eyes, eager in the greenish gloom, moved over the pale face, the dark red hair. "No," he said. "It doesn't make any difference." "Good," said Lily, relaxing. It was clear that she had been worrying. "You got loads of magic," said Snape. "I saw that all the time I was watching you." His voice trailed away. She wasn't listening, but had stretched out on the leafy ground, was looking up at the canopy of leaves overhead. He watched her as greedily as he had watched her in the playground. "How are things at your house?" Lily asked. A little crease appeared between his eyes. "Fine," he said. "I'm not arguing anymore." "Oh, yes, they're arguing," said Snape. He picked up a fistful of leaves and began tearing them apart, apparently unaware of what he was doing. "But it won't be that long now be gone." "Doesn't your dad like magic?" "He doesn't like anything much," said Snape. "Severus," A little smile twisted Snape's mouth when she said his name. Yeah. Tell me about the Dementors again. What do you want to know about them for? If I use magic outside school, I wouldn't give you to the Dementors for that. Dementors are for people who do really bad stuff. They guard the wizard prison Azkaban. Or not going to end up in Azkaban. You're too. He turned red again and shredded more leaves. Then a small rustling noise behind Harry made him turn. Petunia, hiding behind a tree, had lost her footing. "Tony!" said Lily, surprised and welcome in her voice. But Snape had jumped to his feet. "Who's fine now?" he shouted. "What do you want?" Petunia was breathless, alarmed at being caught. Harry could see her struggling for something hurtful to say. "What is that you're wearing anyway?" she said, pointing at Snape's chest. "Your mum's blouse?" There was a crack. The branch over Petunia's head had fallen. Lily screamed. The branch caught Petunia on the shoulder, and she staggered backward and burst into tears. "Tony!" But Petunia was running away. Lily rounded on Snape. "Did you make that happen?" "No." He looked both defiant and scared. "You did!" She was backing away from him. "You did! You hurt her!" "No. No, I didn't." But the lie didn't convince Lily. After one last furtive look, she ran from the little thicket off after her sister, and Snape looked both miserable and confused. And the scene reformed. Harry looked around. He was on platform 9 3/4, and Snape stood beside him, slightly hunched, next to a thin, sallow-faced, sour-looking woman who greatly resembled him. Snape was staring at a family of 4 a short distance away. 2 girls stood a little apart from their parents. Lily seemed to be pleading with her sister. Harry moved closer to listen. "I'm sorry, Judy. I'm sorry. Listen." She caught her sister's hand and held tight to it, even though Petunia tried to pull it away. "Maybe once I'm there. Now listen, Tony. Maybe once I'm there, I'll be able to go to Professor Dumbledore and persuade him to change his mind." "I don't want to go," said Petunia, and she dragged her hand back out of her sister's grasp. "You think I want to go to some stupid castle and learn to be a... Her eyes roved over the platform, over the cats kneeling in their owners' arms, over the elves fluttering and hooting at each other in cages, over the students, some already in their long black robes, loading trunks onto the scarlet steam engine, or else greeting one another with glad cries after a summer apart. You think I want to be a freak? Lily's eyes filled with tears as Petunia succeeded in tugging her hand away. I'm not a freak, said Lily. That's a horrible thing to say. That's where you're going, said Petunia with relish. A special school for freaks. You and that Snape boy. Weirdos, that's what you two are. It's good you're being separated from normal people. It's for our safety. Lily glanced toward her parents, who were looking around the platform with an air of wholehearted enjoyment, drinking in the scene. Then she looked back at her sister, and her voice was low and fierce. You didn't think it was such a freak school when you wrote to the headmaster and begged him to take you. Petunia turned scarlet. Beg? I didn't beg. I saw his reply. It was very kind. You shouldn't have read, whispered Petunia. That was my private... How could you? Lily gave herself away by half glancing toward where Snape stood nearby. Petunia gasped. That boy found it. You and that boy have been sneaking in my room. No, not sneaking. Now Lily was on the defensive. Severus saw the envelope, and he couldn't believe a muggle could have contacted Hogwarts, that's all. He says there must be wizards working undercover in the postal service who take care of... Apparently wizards poke their noses in everywhere, said Petunia, now as pale as she had been flushed. Freak! She spat at her sister, and she flounced off to where her parents stood. Oh. Hugs for Petunia and Lily. And I say this because I imagine when they were growing up, they were close. As close as sisters could be. And then Lily became a muggle-born witch. And that created this rift. And Petunia started to get jealous. And it's really heartbreaking when you put it in this context because honestly, it's my little sister Amy's birthday. She's 14. Happy birthday to her if you're listening, Amy. But like, the only picture I have of her and I together is when she was 6. Let that sink in. She was 6. And I was 14. And it really hurts not seeing her. It really does, because I miss her a lot. It just really hurts. But yeah, this is the only picture I have of her and I. This is the only picture I have of Amy, that's my sister's name, and I together. Again, I was 14 and she was 6. It really hurts. So it's like, yeah, I can see why Petunia's acting this way, but at the same time, hi baby. But at the same time, it's like, you can't take it out on Lily. Well, Lily Potter. But it's it's really sad if you think about it. Because, like I said, you have to imagine that they were so close, and then once Lily became a witch, there was this rift and it couldn't be mended. And I like to think that part of adult Petunia carries some regret because of that, but she just can't voice it because of Uncle Vernon being Uncle Vernon, and that is why I say Petunia deserves better. She really does. But, psychology aside, we are joined by my lovely Corinne. I had to get her a new collar. I hope you like it. But, yeah. We're joined by her. Hi, baby. Aww. And then another thing that I also remember, Petunia and Lily's parents were proud to have a witch in the family. So Petunia was also probably feeling some sort of resentment and even further jealousy over the preference. And that's gotta be hard on her too. So yeah, it's like Aunt Petunia probably still carries some regret of not wanting to try to mend the bridge with Lily while it was still repairable. But being with Uncle Vernon, I think, kind of impacted her to be even more jealous and therefore more resentful rather than remorseful. And again, this is why I say adult Aunt Petunia deserves better. You can agree with me if you want, you can disagree with me if you want, but these are just some thoughts in my head throughout all this. But moving on, before I lose track of the chapter. The scene dissolved again. Snape was hurrying along the corridor of the Hogwarts Express as it clattered through the countryside. He already changed into his school robes, perhaps taking the first opportunity to take off his dreadful muggle clothes. At last he stopped outside a compartment in which a group of rowdy boys were talking. Hunched in the corner seat beside the window was Lily, her face pressed against the window pane. Snape slid open the compartment door and sat down opposite Lily. She glanced at him, then looked back out of the window. She had been crying. "I don't want to talk to you," she said in a constricted voice. "Why not?" "Tony hates me because we saw that letter from Dumbledore." "So what?" She threw him a look of deep dislike. "So she's my sister!" "She's only a—" He got himself quickly. Lily, too busy trying to wipe her eyes without being noticed, didn't hear him. "But we're going," he said, unable to express the exhilaration in his voice. "This is it!" Oh, wrong voice. "This is it. We're off to Hogwarts." She nodded, mopping her eyes. But in spite of herself, she half smiled. "You'd better be in Slytherin," said Snape, encouraged that she had brightened a little. "Slytherin?" One of the boys sharing the compartment, who had shown no interest at all in Lily or Snape until that point, looked around at the word, whose attention had been focused entirely on the two beside the window. Saw his father, slight, black-haired like Snape, but with that indefinable air of having been well cared for, even adored, that Snape so conspicuously lacked. He wants to become Slytherin. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? No. Honestly, I wouldn't. There are good things and bad things about each house. And I like to think that every house has its merits. And honestly, I have friends and family across all the houses, so that helps too. But I'm a Gryffindor in case you're wondering, or couldn't tell because of my bookmark. But yeah, I'm a Gryffindor. Although I do believe most of my family are Hufflepuffs. And that honestly says a lot. My grandma I know for sure is Hufflepuff. And my mom is definitely a Ravenclaw. But yeah, I do have some family members that could be a Slytherin, so it's like, and I also have friends again across all four houses, so it's like all four houses have their merits, and they also have their pitfalls. So if I were in Slytherin, I wouldn't really leave per se. I would just adapt. You know what I mean? But I'm a Gryffindor, so moving on. James asked the boy lounging on the seats opposite him, and with a jolt, Harry realized that it was Sirius. Sirius didn't smile. "My family have been in Slytherin," he said. "Blimey," said James. "I thought you seemed all right." Sirius grinned. "Maybe I'll break the tradition. Where are you heading if you've got the choice?" James lifted an invisible sword. Well, I don't know about invisible, but hiya! Sword as bookmark. Or wait, no, bookmark as sword. But moving on. "Gryffindor, we're to all the brave at heart, like my dad." Snape made a small discharging noise. Snape turned on him. "Got a problem with that?" "No," said Snape though his slight sneer said otherwise. "If you'd rather be brawny than brainy." "Where are you hoping to go, seeing as you want neither?" injected Sirius. James roared with laughter. Lily sat up, rather flushed, and looked from James to Sirius in dislike. "Come on, Severus, let's find another compartment." "Woo!" James and Sirius imitated her lofty voice. James tried to trip Snape as he passed. "See us, Nicholas!" a voice called, as the compartment door slammed, and the scene dissolved once more. Harry was standing right behind Snape as they faced the candlelit house tables, lined with rapt faces. Then Professor McGonagall said, "Evans Lily!" He watched his mother walk forward on trembling legs and sit down upon the rickety stool. Professor McGonagall dropped the sorting hat onto her head, and barely a second after it had touched her dark red hair, the hat cried, "Gryffindor!" Harry heard Snape let out a tiny groan, so he took off the hat, handing it back to Professor McGonagall, then hurried toward the cheering Gryffindors. But when she glanced back at Snape, and there was a sad little smile on her face, Harry saw Sirius move up on the bench to make room for her. She took one look at him, seemed to recognize him from the train, folded her arms, and firmly turned her back on him. The roll call continued. Harry watched Lupin, Pettigrew, and his father join Lily and Sirius at the Gryffindor table. At last, when only a dozen students remained to be sorted, Professor McGonagall called Snape. Harry walked with him to the stool, watched him place the hat upon his head. "Slytherin!" cried the sorting hat. And Severus Snape moved off to the other side of the hall. away from Lily to where the Slytherins were cheering him, to where Lucius Malfoy, a prefect badge gleaming upon his chest, patted Snape on the back as he sat down beside him. And the scene changed. Lily and Snape were walking across the castle courtyard, evidently arguing. Harry hurried to catch up with them, to listen in. As he reached them, he realized how much taller they both were. A few years seemed to have passed since they were. Thought we were supposed to be friends. Snape was saying. Best friends. We are, Seb, but I don't like some of the people you're hanging around with. I'm sorry, but I detest Avery and Mosiber. Mosiber! What have you seen him, Seb? He's creepy. You know what he tried to do to Mary MacDonald the other day? Lily had reached a pillar and leaned against it, looking up into the thin, sallow face. That was missing, said Snape. It's a laugh, that's all. It's dark magic, and if you think that's funny... What about the stuff Potter and demons get up to? Demanded Snape. His color rose again as he said it, unable, it seemed, to hold in his resentment. What's Potter got to do with anything? Said Lily. They sneak out at night. There's something weird about that Lupin. Where does he keep going? He's ill, said Lily. They say he's ill. Every month at the full moon. I know your theory, said Lily, and she sounded cold. Why are you so obsessed with them anyway? Why do you care what they're doing at night? Just trying to show you they're not wonderful as everyone seems to think they are. The intensity of his gaze made her blush. They don't use dark magic, though. She dropped her voice. And you were being really ungrateful. I heard about what happened the other night. You were sneaking down that tunnel by the Whomping Willow, and James Potter saved you from whatever was down there. Snape's whole face contorted, and he sputtered. Saved. Saved? You think he was playing the hero? He was saving his neck, and his friends, too. You're not going to. I won't let you. Let me! Let me! Lily's bright green eyes were slits. Snape backtracked at once. I didn't mean. I just don't want to. I just don't want to see you be made a fool of. James Potter fancies you. The words seemed wrenched from him against his will, and he's not. Everyone thinks. Big British hero. Snape's bitterness and dislike were rendering him incoherent, and Lily's eyebrows were traveling farther and farther up from her forehead. I know James Potter's an arrogant toad-wag, she said, cutting across Snape. I don't need you to tell me that. But most of her and Avery's idea of humor is just evil. Evil stuff. I don't understand how you can be friends with them. Harry doubted that Snape became further stricter on most of her and Avery. The moment he had insulted James Potter, his whole body relaxed, and as they walked away, there was a new spring in Snape's step. Yeah. Harry watched again as Snape left the Great Hall after sitting his OWL in defense against the Dark Arts. Watched as he wandered away from the castle and strayed inadvertently close to the place beneath the beech tree where James, Sirius, Lupin, and Pettigrew sat together. But Harry kept his distance this time, because he knew what happened after James had hoisted Severus into the air and taunted him. He knew what had been done and said. He gave him no great pleasure to do it again. He watched as Lily joined the group and went to Snape's defense. Distantly, he heard Snape shout at her in his humiliation, and in his fury, the unforgivable word, mudblood. The scene changed. I'm sorry. I'm not interested. I'm sorry. Save your breath. It was nighttime. Lily, who was wearing the dressing gown, stood with her arms folded in front of the portrait of the fat lady, at the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. I only came out because Mary told me. Oh, wrong voice. Sorry. I only came out because Mary told me you were threatened to sleep here. I was. I would have done. I never meant to call it mudblood. It just slipped out. There was no pity in Lily's voice. It's too late. I've made excuses for you for years. None of my friends can understand why I would talk to you. You're your precious little Death Eater friends. You see, you don't even deny it. You don't even deny that's what you're holding me to be. You can't wait to join you-know-who, can you? He opened his mouth but closed it without speaking. I can't pretend anymore. You've chosen your way. I've chosen mine. No, listen. I didn't mean to call me mudblood. But you call everyone of my birth mudblood Severus. Why should I be any different? He struggled on the verge of speech, but with a contemptuous look she turned and climbed back through the portrait hole. The corridor dissolved, and the scene took a little longer to reform. Harry seemed to fly through shifting shapes and colors until his surroundings solidified again, and he stood on a hilltop, forlorn and cold in the darkness, the wind whistling through the branches of a few leafless trees. The adult Snape was panting, turning on the spot, his wand gripped tightly in his hand. waiting for something or for someone. His fear infected Harry, too, even though he knew he couldn't be harmed, and he looked over his shoulder, wondering what it was that Snape was waiting for. Then a blinding, jagged jet of white light flew through the air. Harry thought of a bolt of lightning, but Snape had dropped to his knees and his wand had flown out of his hand. Don't kill me. That was not my intention. Any sound of Dumbledore operating had been drowned by the wind in the branches. He stood before Snape with his robe slipping around him, and his face was illuminated from below in the light cast by his wand. "No, Severus, what message does Lord Voldemort have for me?" "No, no message. I'm here on my account." Snape was wringing his hands. He looked a little mad, with his straggling black hair flying around him. "I come with the warning. No, a request. Please." Dumbledore flicked his wand. The leaves and branches still flew through the night air around them. Silence fell on this spot where he and Snape faced each other. What request could a Death Eater make of me? Yes, the prophecy. The prediction. Trelawney. "Ah, yes," said Dumbledore. "How much did you relay to Lord Voldemort?" "Everything. Everything I heard," said Snape. "That is why. It is for that reason he thinks it means Lily Evans." "The prophecy didn't refer to a woman," said Dumbledore. "It spoke of a boy born at the end of July." And correctly, that is Harry, because it cannot be Neville. I'm just putting it out there again now because I still don't see the founding of the theory of it being Neville too, when literally at the end of July, 31 days in July, it has to be Harry. Enough said. Theory debunked. Sorry, it just frustrates me, okay? But moving on. He's going to hunt her down, kill them all. "If she means so much to you," said Dumbledore, "surely Lord Voldemort will spare her. Could you not ask for mercy of the mother in exchange for the son?" I have asked him." "You disgust me," said Dumbledore. and Harry had never heard so much contempt in his voice. Snape seemed to shrink a little. You do not care, then, about the deaths of her husband and child. They can die, as long as you have what you want. Snape said nothing, but merely looked at Dumbledore. I'm always dead, he croaked. Keep her, them, safe, please. And what will you give me in return, Severus? In, in return? Snape gaped at Dumbledore, and Harry expected him to protest. But after a long moment, he said, anything. Or anything. Hi, baby. Oh, hi, baby. The hilltop faded, and Harry stood in Dumbledore's office, and something was making a terrible sound like a wounded animal. Snape was slumped forward in a chair, and Dumbledore was standing over him, looking grim. After a moment or two, Snape raised his face, and he looked like a man who had lived 100 years of misery since leaving the wild hilltop. I thought you were going to keep her safe. She and James put their faith in the wrong person, said Dumbledore. Rather like you, Severus. Weren't you hoping that Lord Voldemort would spare her? Snape's breathing was shallow. The boy survives, said Dumbledore. With a tiny jerk of the head, Snape seemed to flick off an irksome fly. Her son lives. He has her eyes. Precisely her eyes. You remember the shape and color of Lily Evans' eyes, I'm sure. Don't, bellowed Snape. Don't tell. Is this from you, Severus? I wish I were dead. Oh, Snape, you deserve this hug. But if any of you are having these thoughts, please, 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 I cannot stress it enough. Please, 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 please reach out to a mental health professional. They have resources to help you out. And what use would that be to anyone? Said Dumbledore coldly. If you loved Lily Evans, if you truly loved her, then your way forward is clear. Snape seemed to peer through a haze of pain, and Dumbledore's words appeared to take a long time to reach him. What do you mean? You know how and why she died. Make sure it wasn't in vain. Help me protect Lily's son. He does not need protection. The Dark Lord has gone. The Dark Lord will return, and Harry Potter will be in terrible danger when he does. There was a long pause, and slowly Snape regained control of himself, mastered his own breathing. At last he said, very well. Very well. But never, never tell Dumbledore. This must be between us. Swear it. I cannot bear, especially Potter's son. I wanted your words. My Lord Cephas, that I shall never reveal the best of you. Dumbledore sighed, looking down into Snape's ferocious, anguished face. If you insist. The office dissolved but reformed instantly. Snape was pacing up and down in front of Dumbledore. Mediocre, arrogant, father, a determined rule breaker, like to find things like tempting seeing and impertinent. What do you expect to see, Severus? Said Dumbledore, without raising his eyes from a copy of Transfiguration today. Other teachers were perfect, poised, modest, lovable, and reasonably talented. Petunia, I find him an engaging child. Dumbledore turned the page and said without looking up, keep an eye on Quirrell, won't you? Aurora was clever, now everything darkened. Snape and Dumbledore stood a notable part in the end himself, while the last straggler from the U-Ball passed him on the way bed. Well, well, murmured Dumbledore. Horror. He is panicking. He fears retribution. You know how much help he gave the ministry after the Dark Lord fell. Snape looked sideways at Dumbledore's crooked-nosed profile. Karloff intends to flee if the mob burns. Does he? Said Dumbledore softly, as Squire Delacour and Roger Davis came in giggling from the grounds. And are you tempted to join him? No, said Snape, his black eyes on Fur's and Roger's retreating figures. I am not such a coward. No, agreed Dumbledore. You are a braver man, but far than either Karloff. You know, sometimes I think you start too soon. Oh, I wonder that sometimes too. But at the same time, I really just think there's a reason that the Sorting Hat places the students in the respective house. They just have to discover what that later means for them. Like, for me, believe it or not, I always thought of myself as a Ravenclaw. And this was before I got into Harry Potter. So, it's like, I'm out of the box by nature. I do a lot of creative stuff. So it's like, even before I knew Harry Potter, I had to be a Ravenclaw. But as I got older and actually into Harry Potter, I realized that I truly am a Gryffindor. Because I would like to think that an unsung Gryffindor trait is resilience. And I think I have been through so much, past and present, and yet I don't let that change me for the worse. I try to learn from it. That resilience, I think, is ultimately something the hat saw in me that I didn't know I had until I matured. So, like I said, I like to think that the sorting hat looks into who you can be rather than who you currently are. And that's why I'm a Gryffindor. And that's why I feel really proud of being a Gryffindor. I'm proud of the other houses too, but it's like, again, an unsung Gryffindor trait, I think, is resilience. The hat saw my creativity, who I am, and could have put me in Ravenclaw like he did with my mum, but no, he saw who I could be. He saw my resilience before I could, and that's why I'm in Gryffindor. And I would like to think that's why Harry's in Gryffindor too. He has this resilience throughout the series. And instead of putting him in Slytherin, if you remember, the Sorting Hat put him in Gryffindor. He saw beneath what Harry was, and he saw the same resilience he saw in me. How is that for a parallel? But yeah, an unsung Gryffindor trait to sum this whole commentary up: resilience. But moving on. He walked away, leaving Snape looking stricken. And now Harry stood in the headmaster's office yet again. It was night time, and Dumbledore sagged sideways in the throne-like chair behind the desk, apparently semi-conscious. His right hand dangled over the side, blackened and burned. Snape was muttering incantations, pointing his wand at the rest of the hand, while with his left hand he tipped a goblet full of thick golden potion down Dumbledore's throat. After a moment or two, Dumbledore's eyelids fluttered and opened. "Why," said Snape without preamble, "why did you put on that ring? It carries a curse. Surely realize that. Why even touch it?" Marvolo Gaunt sprang away on the desk before Dumbledore. It was cracked. The sword of Gryffindor lay beside it. Dumbledore grimaced. "I was a fool. Sorely tempted. Tempted by what?" Dumbledore didn't answer. "It is a miracle you managed to return here." Snape sounded furious. "That ring carried a curse of extraordinary power. To contain it is all you could for. I had trapped the curse in one hand for the time being." Dumbledore raised his black and useless hand and examined it with the expression of one being shown an interest in curio. done very well, Cedrus. How long do you think I have? Dumbledore's tone was conversational. He might have been asking for a weather forecast. Well, the current weather is sunny and cool. I'm enjoying it, as you can tell. Snape hesitated, then said, I cannot tell. Maybe a year. There is no halting such a spell forever. It will spread eventually. It is the sort of curse that strengthens over time. Dumbledore smiled. The news that he had less than a year to live seemed a matter of little or no concern to him. I am fortunate, extremely fortunate that I have you, Severus. And you finally summoned me a little earlier. I might have been able to do more and buy more time, said Snape furiously. He looked down at the broken ring and the sword. Did you think that breaking the ring would break the curse? Something like that. I was delirious, no doubt, said Dumbledore. With an effort, he straightened himself in his chair. Well, really, this makes matters much more straightforward. Snape looked utterly perplexed. Dumbledore smiled. I refer to the plan of Voldemort's revolving around me. His plan is to have the poor Malfoy boy murdered. Snape sat down in the chair Harry had so often occupied across the desk from Dumbledore. Harry could tell that he wanted to say more on the subject of Dumbledore's cursed hand. But the other held it up in polite refusal to discuss the matter further. Scowling, Snape said, The Dark Lord does not expect Draco to succeed. This is merely punishment for Lucius's recent failures. Slow torture for Draco's parents, while they watch him fail and pay the price. In short, the boy had a death sentence pronounced upon him as surely as I had, said Dumbledore. No, I should have thought that the natural successor to the job once Draco fails is yourself. There was a short pause. That, I think, is the Dark Lord's plan. While Voldemort pursues a moment in the near future when he will not notice by Hogwarts. He leaves the school. Will soon be in his grasp, yes. And if it does fall into his grasp, said Dumbledore, almost, it seemed, as an aside. I have your word that you will do all in your power to protect the students of Hogwarts. Snape gave a stiff nod. Good. Now then, your first priority will be to discover what Draco is up to. The frightened teenage boy is a danger to others as well as to himself. Offer and help and guidance. He ought to accept. He likes you. Much less his father lost faith. Draco blames me. He thinks I have usurped Lucius's position. All the same, try. I am concerned less for myself than for accidental victims of whatever schemes might occur to the boy. Ultimately, of course, there is only one thing to be done. We ought to save him from Lord Voldemort's wrath. Snape raised his eyebrows and his tone was sardonic as he asked, "Oh, intending to let him kill you?" Certainly not. You must kill me. There was a long silence, broken only by an odd clicking noise. Okay, well, here's the silent part. And here's the clicking part. Fox the Phoenix was gnawing a bit of cuttlebone. Would you like me to do it now? Asked Snape, his voice heavy with irony. Or would you like a few moments to compose an epitaph? I'm not quite yet, said Dumbledore, smiling. I dare say the moment will present itself in due course. Given what has happened tonight, he held his brother's hand. You can be sure that it will happen within a year. If you don't mind, John, said Snape roughly. Why not Draco do it? The boy's soul is not yet so damaged, said Dumbledore. I would not have it ripped apart on my account. As much as I want to agree with Dumbledore here, I am disagreeing surely on the account that oppression can leave damaging scars too. And I think Draco's under a lot of pressure to be like his father, but he doesn't have it in him to live up to his father's expectations because he fears that if he fails to meet his father's expectations, then everything's just gonna go haywire for him. And honestly, relatable. I sometimes go through that with my mom too, and it's complicated, let me tell you. But, yeah. Moving on though. And your soul, and my soul, Dumbledore. Mine. You have known nor whether it'll harm your soul to help, then old man avoid pain and humiliation, said Dumbledore. I ask this one great favor of you, Severus, because death is coming to me as surely as the public comments will finish autumn of Mrs. Lee. I confess I prefer quick, painless exit to the protracted and messy affair it would be if, for instance, Greyback is involved. I hear Voldemort has recruited him. Or dear Bellatrix, who likes to play with her food before she eats it. His tone was light, but his blue eyes pierced Snape as they had frequently pierced Harry, as though the soul they discussed was visible to him. At last Snape gave another curt nod. Dumbledore seemed satisfied. Thank you, Severus. The office disappeared, and now Snape and Dumbledore were strolling together in the deserted grounds by twilight. What are you doing this, Potter? Oh, you lozenges together, Snape asked abruptly. Dumbledore was furious. Why? You are trying to give him more detention, Severus. The boy will soon have spent more time in detention than out. He needs his father over again. And looks perhaps, but his deepest nature is much more like his mother's. I spend time with Harry because I have things to discuss with him. Information I must give him before it is too late. Information, repeated Snape. You trust him. You do not trust me. It is not a question of trust. I have, as we both know, limited time. It is essential that I give the boy enough information for him to do what he needs to do. And why may I not have the same information? I prefer not to put all my secrets in one basket, particularly not a basket that spends so much time dangling on the arm of little Voldemort, which I do. Or and you do it extremely well. Do not think I underestimate the constant danger in which you place yourself, Severus. To give Voldemort what appears to be valuable information while withholding the essentials of the job, I would entrust nobody but you. Yes, by much more than a boy incapable of occlumency, magic, immediate, and intelligent connection into the mind. Voldemort fears that connection, said Dumbledore. Not so long ago he had one small taste of what truly sharing Harry's mind means to him. It was a pain such as he has never experienced. He will not try to possess Harry again, I am sure of it. Not in that way. I don't understand. Lord Voldemort's soul, maimed as it is, cannot bear close contact with a soul like Harry's. Like tongue on frozen steel, like flesh in flame. Souls. We were mind. In the case of Harry and Lord Voldemort, to speak of one is to speak of the other. Dumbledore glanced around to make sure that they were alone. They were close by the Forbidden Forest now, but there was no sign of anyone near them. After you killed me, Severus, you refused to tell me everything. Yet you expect that small service of me, snarled Snape, and real anger glared in the thin face now. You take a great deal for granted, Dumbledore. Perhaps I have changed my mind. You gave me your word, Severus, and while we are talking about services you owe me, I thought you agreed to keep a close eye on our young Slytherin friend. Snape looked angry, mutinous. Dumbledore sighed. Come into my office tonight, Severus, at 11, and you shall not complain that I have no confidence in you. They were back in Dumbledore's office. The windows dark and Fox sat silent as Snape sat quite still, as Dumbledore walked around him, talking. Harry must not know, not until the last moment, not until it's necessary. Otherwise, how could he have the strength to do what must be done? What must he do? That is between Harry and I. Now listen closely, Severus. There will come a time after my death do not argue. Do not interrupt. There will come a time when Lord Voldemort will seem to fear for the life of his Snape. For my dream. Snape looked astonished. Precisely. Precisely. If there comes a time when Lord Voldemort stops sending that Snape forth to do his bidding, but keeps it safe beside him under magical protection, then I think it would be safe to tell her. Tell him what? What? Dumbledore took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Tell him that on the night Lord Voldemort tried to kill him, when Lily cast her own knife between them as a shield, the killing curse rebounded upon Lord Voldemort, and a fragment of Voldemort's soul was blasted apart from the ball, and matched itself onto the only living soul left in that collapsing building. Part of Lord Voldemort lives inside Harry, and it's that which gives him the power to speak with snakes, and a connection with Lord Voldemort's mind that he's never understood. And while that fragment of soul, unused by Voldemort, remains attached to and protected by Harry, Lord Voldemort cannot die. Harry seemed to be watching the two men from one end of a long tunnel. They were so far away from him, their voices echoing strangely in his ears. So the boy must die, asked Snape quite calmly. And Voldemort himself must do it, Severus. That is essential. Another long silence. Then Snape said, 4. Oh, yes. Let me get the testing for Lily. We have protected him because it has been essential to teach him, to raise him, to let him try his strength, said Dumbledore, his eyes still shut tight. Meanwhile, the connection between them grows stronger. A parasitic growth. Sometimes I've thought he suspects it himself. If I know him, he will have arranged matters so that when he does seek out News death, it will truly mean the end of Voldemort. Dumbledore opened his eyes. Snape was horrified. You have kept my mind so that he can die at the right moment. Don't be shocked, Severus. How many men and women have you watched die? Yet you don't only those who can be saved. Mm, only those whom I couldn't save, said Snape. He stood up. You heard you me. I have spied and lied for you. Put myself in mortal danger for you. Everything was supposed to be to keep Lily Potter's son safe. No, Tommy, you have been bringing him like a pig for slaughter. But this is touching, Severus, said Dumbledore seriously. Are you going to care for the boy after all? For him, shouted Snape. Expecto Patronum! From the tip of his wand burst the silver dove. She landed on the office floor, bounded once across the office, and soared out of the window. Dumbledore watched her fly away, and as her silvery glow faded, he turned back to Snape, whose eyes were full of tears. I'm using the film here. Lily, after all this time, always, said Snape, and the scene shifted. Now Harry saw Snape talking to the portrait of Dumbledore behind his desk. You will have to give Voldemort the correct date of Harry's departure from his Aunt and uncle's, said Dumbledore. Not to do so would raise suspicion, when Voldemort believes you so well informed. However, you must plant the idea of decoys. That, I think, ought to ensure Harry's safety. Try confronting Mundungus Fletcher. And Severus, if you are forced to take part in the chase, be sure to act your part convincingly. I am counting on you to remain in almost good books for as long as possible. The Hogwarts will be left to the mercy of the Carrows. Now Snape was head to head with Mundungus in an unfamiliar tavern, Mundungus's face looking curiously blank, Snape frowning in concentration. he was just will suggest to the Order of the Phoenix, Snape murmured, that they use equals. Called them identical copies. It is the only thing that must work. You will forget that I have suggested this. You will present it as your own idea. You understand? I understand, murmured Mundungus, his eyes unfocused. Now Harry was flying alongside Snape on a broomstick through a clear dark night. He was accompanied by other hooded Death Eaters, and ahead were Lupin and a Harry who was really George. The Death Eater moved ahead of Snape and raised his wand, pointing it directly at Lupin's back. Succum Sempra, shouted Snape. But the spell, intended for the Death Eater's long hand, missed and hit George instead. And next, Snape was kneeling in Snape's old dungeon. Tears were dripping from the end of his hooked nose as he read the old letter from Lily. The second page only carried a few words. Could have ever been friends with Colored Grindelwald. I think her mind's going personally. Lots of love, Lily. And I love Lily's signature. I really do. That's what it looks like here. This is Lily's signature and I love it. It's so pretty. Snape took the page bearing Lily's signature and her love, tucking it inside his robes. Then he ripped into the photograph he was also holding, so that his head apart from was full of laugh, showing the portion of showing James and Harry back onto the floor, under the chest of drawers. And now Snape stood again in the headmaster's study as Phineas and Giles came hurrying into his portrait. Headmaster, they are camping in the Forest of Tea. The Mudblood. Do not use that word. The Granger girl, then, mentioned the places she opened her bag and I heard her. Good. Very good, cried the portrait of Dumbledore behind the headmaster's chair. Now, Severus, the sword. Do not forget that it must be taken under the conditions of need and battle. And you must know that to give it, you must have Harry's mind and see after him. Oh, no, said Snape curtly. He approached the portrait of Dumbledore and pulled out its side. It swung forward, revealing a hidden cavity from behind it from which he took the sword of Gryffindor. And so on, going to tell me why it's so important to give Potter a sword, said Snape as he spun a traveling cloak over his robes. No, I don't think so, said Dumbledore's portrait. He will know what to do with it. And Severus, be very careful. They may not take kindly to your parents after George Weasley's mishap. Snape turned at the door. Don't worry, Dumbledore, he said coolly. I have a plan. And Snape left the room. Harry rose up out of the presidency, and moments later he lay on the carpeted floor in exactly the same room. Same light just closed the door. And that is the end of this long chapter. Thank you for bearing it with me through the end. And again, happy 14th birthday, Amy, if you're listening. I love and miss you so, so, so very much. More than you could ever know. But, so then, join me next week for chapter 34, The Forest Again. Until then, bye!